The powers that be are hard at work trying to secure more funding for Ukraine. And it's like every time I turn around, we're sending more money to Ukraine. And I look around. I've been traveling a good bit. I get a good sense of what's going on in America. And we're all living in hard times. I think it's safe to say that the majority of you all can't deny that. Sure, some of you may be living lavish, but the majority of Americans, they're living in hard times. Harder than they've been in a while. And listen, if America wants to help other countries, okay. But first you have to help Americans. If I'm looking around and our cities in America are decaying, crimes at an all-time high, hell, some of the local stores had to lock up their jean section. You can't even go try on a pair of jeans. They're locked in glass cases. So crime's at an all-time high. Like I said, these once great, beautiful American cities are turning to straight garbage. People are having a hard time affording rent, affording groceries, affording gas. Yet every day when I turn on the news, it's billions more to Ukraine, billions more to Ukraine. Forgive me, but I think that America should protect its own borders before protecting someone else's borders. If Americans are well taken care of, and if America is not on a decline and we decide to help someone, cool. But that's not the case. Americans are being put last as these conflicts around the world are being funded by America. So as you struggle to find a way to get by this month, there's people in Ukraine that are sitting in hog heaven right now because, listen, I don't believe that all of this money is going where they say it's going. But, recently there's been some pushback about sending so much money over there, but now the Secretary of Defense, Biden, along with several others, they're threatening that, if we don't fund the war in Ukraine, then we're going to have to send soldiers over there to fight. They're basically threatening that, hey, if you don't give us more money to send to Ukraine, we're going to send your kids to die. We're going to send your kids into the meat grinder if you don't allow us to keep, just pumping billions and billions of dollars over there. Now, listen, I understand some of you are sympathetic to what's going on over there. I don't like war. But I also don't like being threatened. But make no mistake about it, the American people are being threatened right now that if you don't back off, and that if you aren't accepting of just sending countless amounts of money over there, that, hey, we're going to send our troops, we're going to send your loved ones over there to fight. And I don't deal well with authority, for one. And I definitely don't deal well with these threats because that's what this is. It's not a warning. It's them basically saying, hey, you're going to give us this money or else. That's what it feels like to me. It feels almost like a shakedown. But before I go any further, I'm going to roll these clips really quickly so you can hear what's being said, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Seriously. And so we can't support Ukraine. Their chief advisor yesterday said they're likely to lose this war if they lose U.S. support. And Putin gets all of Ukraine, then what? Then where does he go? Because right then, he's up against the eastern flank of NATO. And if you think the cost of supporting Ukraine is high now, just imagine how much higher it's going to be, not just in national treasure, but in American blood, if he starts going after one of our NATO allies. Because as the president also said, we take our Article 5 commitments very seriously.
If Putin takes Ukraine, he won't stop there. It's important to see the long run here. He's going to keep going. He's made that pretty clear. If Putin attacks a NATO ally, if he keeps going, and then he attacks a NATO ally, where we've committed as a NATO member that we defend every inch of NATO territory, then we'll have something that we don't seek and that we don't have today. American troops fighting Russian troops. American troops fighting Russian troops if he moves into other parts of NATO. Make no mistake, today's vote's going to be long remembered, and history's going to judge harshly those who turn their back on freedom's cause. We can't let Putin win. Say it again, we can't let Putin win. It's in our overwhelming national interest and international interest of all our friends.
Now listen, I know that everyone is on different sides when it comes to this situation, but Putin hasn't ever really said that he's interested in going after other countries. Like, Putin hasn't really threatened that after Ukraine, he's coming for Poland or some other, NATO country. He hasn't threatened that. In fact, I don't think the war in Ukraine would be as bad as it is today if they were to have sat down and had the discussions that they were originally supposed to have. Ukraine and Russia were going to sit down and have conversations, maybe even figure out something. But America said, So, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Because, like I said, people are strongly on one side. Either you strongly, firmly support Ukraine, or you're so strongly against the war and against funding Ukraine that you kind of overlook the fact that Putin may be plotting on doing something else. He hasn't really given an indication that he would do that, but looking at history, it's possible. I do think it's a possibility that if Russia were to take over Ukraine, that they may push into another country. That's possible. It's possible. If you think it's not possible, then obviously you don't understand world history or military history or how these things work. But once again, Putin hasn't ever said that he wanted to do that. So it's really being used as an excuse here. And to be clear, the president wasn't clear in what he was saying, but he kept saying, like, we don't want them to push into another NATO country. Ukraine's not a part of NATO. Ukraine is not a part of NATO. The fact that we are even having this discussion right now is all because all of these countries have joined NATO. And NATO is kind of starting to surround Russia. Ukraine's one of the only last places, that hasn't become a part of NATO. And there's been talks about Ukraine becoming part of NATO. And that is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why this conflict even started. We're pushing closer and closer and closer to Russia. All of these countries surrounding Russia are slowly becoming part of NATO. And it feels like or at least for people in Russia, it feels like we're backing them into a wall. But to hear these threats, knowing what that means, it's U.S. troops fighting Russian troops head on. There's no coming back from that. And that's something that we need to try to avoid every step of the way. And simply, it's not something we can afford right now. Our funding for Ukraine, it's drying up. And as we provide all of these weapons to Ukraine and now Israel, our stockpiles, they're slimming down. If we were to get into a conflict today, we would be underprepared. because so much money and so much equipment has been flown out to all of these other countries, and Israel and Ukraine. Those are just the conflicts in the countries that are in the forefront that we all know about. I assure you, there are several conflicts involving our military that are happening around the world right now as we speak, and many of them you'll never know about it. There's wars being fought on this planet right now that you'll never know about. There's battles happening behind the scenes, at least for us. Not behind the scenes for everyone, for the people involved. So I think that we need to dial back on these threats. I think we need to dial back on the talk of U.S. troops fighting Russian troops. And I think it's gotten to the point where we kind of got to let it go. We kind of have to let it go. Even politicians, mayors, members of the army in Ukraine are starting to call out Zelensky. They're starting to call out how things are going in Ukraine. The war has already been lost. And at this point, it's just you're sacrificing so many people. You're sacrificing so many young people. And now, it was sad. The last little recruitment that I saw of Ukrainian troops, it was all like old dudes and stuff. You're sending these young kids to the meat grinder. Hopefully something gets figured out. Hopefully America doesn't get involved further. Hopefully America starts worrying about its own people instead of Ukraine and every other country in the world. But that day will probably never come, and things will probably get worse. But for now, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. While you're down there, if you're feeling generous and you want to support the channel, because Lord knows I need it, because YouTube has been cracking down hard lately, you can support the channel directly via CashApp. I will have my CashApp in the pinned comment of this video. Or you can send a super thanks, or for totally free, you can help the channel in multiple ways. By leaving a comment, liking the video, subscribing, ringing that notification bell. But with all of that being said, I will talk to you all very soon in the next video.